Hey guys, this is Keith Shillan. I am a writer for Sherdog.com. I'm also the executive producer of the Loudmouth MMA Podcast Network. It's a wonderful partnership. With that partnership, we are always trying to improve our content, improve our quality, give more shows to the networks. So this is a brand new show. This is called MMA Past, Present, and Future. I've been doing podcasts for a little bit now, and one thing I used to do in the past, I used to interview a lot of fighters. I haven't really got a chance to do that recently. It's something I want to get back to. So to come up with a unique show, I decided to do a show called MMA Past, Present, Future. The idea behind this is to interview somebody who I believe made a big impact on the sport in past years, to interview someone who's making a big impact in current, whether it be in UFC, One Championship, Bellator, wherever, Invicta, wherever, and then also interview someone that I believe is going to make a huge impact, be a big name in the future. So you kind of get the idea where I'm doing this. Now, the three guests I have today, I couldn't ask for a better lineup for our very first show. I have UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture. I have UFC standout Miranda Maverick, and I have LFA standout Dana White Contender Series veteran Cody Brundage. So without further ado, let's get right into it. All right, guys, we're going to get started with the very first guest. As you can already see on the screen, before I talk about this guest, I want to give a little backstory. So I've been a media member for about 4 years now, work for Sherdog. One thing I always preach is that we can't root for fighters. You got to be fair. You got to give, you tell the story. You don't really root. But I was a fan at one time. Well, I'm still a fan, but of all the years of me rooting for fighters, there's only been one fighter that I rooted harder than I rooted for any fighter. And this is actually our guest right now. I'm not just saying this because he's my guest. You listen to any past shows. When I did the MMA Yesterday show, I talked about who my all-time favorite fighter. This guy is a former UFC tournament champion. Check out MMA Yesterday if you don't know what those are. He's a 3-time UFC heavyweight champion. He is a 2-time UFC light heavyweight champion. He was also UFC lightweight interim championship, which he turned into the championship. He is in the UFC Hall of Fame. He does other things besides fighting. He's been a coach, a gym owner, an ambassador, a commentator, an author, and of course a TV and movie star. Of course, he is the great Randy the Natural Couture. Randy, how you doing, man?
Doing great, bud. How are you?
Excellent. Thanks for coming on. So I just said some of your accolades. You have even more. Do you ever just sit back and be like, man, I'm the man? Do you ever do that?
No, I don't know if you reflect like that. On occasion, something will happen or somebody will ask a question that forces you to recollect or kind of go back. It was funny, they're getting ready to put out a 6-part documentary series on my career and stuff. And they asked me to list all of my injuries in my entire life.
Oh, jeez.
Starting at a pretty age. And so when you start chronologically going through everything that you've broken and everything that you've injured over the course of your life, it definitely gets your attention. So I was like, holy crap, how am I even walking around?
And that's probably like forgetting all like the little things, like when you were in high school, you strained your hamstring and you had to sit out for a couple of days, or then, you were in college, you wrestled internationally, and then all the stuff after that. I mean,
yeah. Well, let's go back to second grade in a play fight with my buddies on the playground, and they swung me around and ran me head first right into the cement wall, and I split my head open. That was the first. That started it off.
That was it. So after getting hit at the playground, that hurt more than Tim Sylvia hit you.
Well, that's just one I remember.
Yeah. So let's do this. So like I said, this is a show that we kind of reflect a little bit on the past. You just talked about all these memories you have. When I think of Randy Couture, the first thing I always think of is like always beating the odds. Like some of the things I think of, you have so many amazing memories. I think about the first fight against Vitor Belfort, where you were this huge long shot. You kind of an unknown. You only had that, the tournament win where Vitor, actually the same card you were on, Vitor was knocking out Tank Abbott in
that's true.
Unbelievable fashion. I think about the war. You had 2 fights against Pedro, but the first one, an all-time classic war against Pedro Hizo. I think about you literally spanking Tito Ortiz when people thought he was the best fighter in the world. I think about when you come back against Tim Sylvia after being retired. Is there one moment, if you could only pick one, I know you've probably been asked this before, but if you could only pick one moment, what's the one that you're like most proud of, or even one that kind of surprised you a little bit?
Well, I think that Tim Sylvia fight you mentioned is certainly one that comes to mind a lot. That crowd that night in Ohio was absolutely amazing.
Sure.
I think at the point it was the largest crowd we'd had in North America for an MMA fight. Obviously, that's been broken now in Toronto. Actually, my retirement fight, I wasn't the main event, but there was about 50,000 people at that one. But there was, I think, 22,000 people in Ohio at Nationwide Arena, and that last 10-second countdown, and
Yeah.
just that whole thing, being retired for 13 months and coming out, to fight Tim, and the disparaging difference in our sizes, and
Sure.
just a whole things that were really, really special. That's probably the closest I ever came to a one-punch knockout.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm kind of glad it didn't go that way, because I think everybody, as was the norm for me, questioning my sanity
Of course.
at that age, at I think 43 or 44, going back in and fighting for the heavyweight championship and fighting a guy like Tim, who's so formidable.
Yeah.
I was one of the few, certainly my mom gave me that look like, what are you doing? I think that there were many fights in my career where that was a situation. People thought, this guy doesn't have a chance. He's old. He's this, that, and the other thing. And so I definitely, there was a theme there for sure.
So you came back, you mentioned the Tim Sylvia fight, you said you came back, but right before that, you actually fought at light heavyweight, and then you returned to heavyweight. That's one thing about you. You're like the OG of switching weight classes. Like, that's something we see a lot of now. I think of, Conor McGregor was a guy that went in 2 weight classes. Mm-hmm. You got Israel Adesanya is trying to do this right now, middleweight. The list goes on and on, but you were the first guy to do it. Now, let me ask this question. I always wonder this. Who was better, heavyweight Randy or light heavyweight Randy?
I think, in a lot of ways, they're the same guy.
Obviously.
Yeah, but even, all the things that go into making a fight are obviously the same in each weight class. I had to approach heavyweights a little bit differently. I had to think about it a little more. I couldn't just go head up with guys that size. It's a really, really bad idea. And obviously I got knocked on my keister more than once by both light heavyweights and heavyweights. So I just think you had to be a little more technical about it. They're so big and generally so strong that you can't just go head up with guys like that.
All right, it broke up a little bit, guys. I apologize. Randy, just finish what you were saying. You were talking about that you just had to change so differently the 2 styles.
Yeah, I think heavyweight Randy Couture versus light heavyweight Randy Couture. Heavyweight Randy Couture had to think a little bit more. Had to find a little more creative ways to solve the problem because of the size difference. I was stuck in between weight classes. I walked around at 220. I'm walking around at 215, 214 right now. It literally very rarely fluctuated. So I'm very small for a heavyweight in the heavyweight division.
Sure.
You got guys like Tim and Brock that are literally cutting weight to make the limit.
Yeah, that's right.
And I walked around at 220. So, where I think my natural weight class was probably a lot closer to 205 and being a light heavyweight.
Now, when I think about you, I think about you are always willing to take challenges. MMA has changed so much. You're such a competitor. I'm sure you still think, like, is there any stars? Now, obviously, the Fedor fight is always brought up. That's the guy you always want to challenge yourself again. But besides Fedor, look at the guys today: John Jones, Stipe Miocic, Daniel Cormier. Like, do you ever wonder how you would have done against these guys, or just do you just want to test it, see how it would have went? No, obviously, I'm not saying
that kind of gets into that. Okay, well, me at my peak and them at their peak.
Yeah.
When Jones came on the scene, I was kind of on the downslide and headed out of the sport, honestly.
Yeah.
They asked me if I wanted to fight him, and I said, nobody wants to fight him.
No.
Not right now. He's literally firing on all cylinders right now. And I ended up fighting Brandon Vera instead of John Jones, and that was the UK fight in Manchester.
Sure, yeah.
I was never a guy that had a hit list like that, or I want to fight this guy or that guy. I just kind of always let that stuff organically happen and unwind, and whatever made sense for the promotion. And I was never going to walk away from a fight or turn a fight down. I probably should not have fought Mike Van Arsdale. I had staph in my left knee horribly. I was on antibiotics the whole time. That's probably the one fight
I should have pulled out of. You got the Gator roll on him. Right?
What's that?
I'm sorry. You got the Gator roll on, right?
The anaconda choke, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, the wrestler in me calls it the Gator.
Yeah.
it's funny because of all the guys that are, that came after you that were successful at heavyweight and light heavyweight, the guy that always reminds me most of you, who's had so much success, is Daniel Cormier, because obviously success at light heavyweight, success at heavyweight, success into his 40s, obviously the big wrestling base. You guys both commentate, even the same college. You both wrestled at the same college. Do you see yourself in him?
Well, I certainly see his application of his years of wrestling experience into his fight style, and that was certainly where I came from as well. I think we share a lot of common roots. I'm a big fan of Daniel. I think he's a great guy. I love the way he commentates. I think he's articulate. He highlights the sport and the athletes the way that I think an athlete commentator can do, and he does a great job at it. You mentioned all the similarities. I think anybody that's got their eyes open can see those similarities, and they're undeniable.
Yeah, when people, they talked about Stipe Miocic and his run in the heavyweight title, and your name always gets brought up because you had a run in the heavyweight division. I always say, well, we kind of seen it a little bit. Daniel Cormier, like how competitive it was with Daniel Cormier. That's why I just expected to be very similar if you did. Now, let me ask this. You're considered a pioneer of the sport. What would you say is the biggest change or the most positive change from when you started to now?
Well, I think obviously the most positive change is running towards unified rules and rules that everybody can understand. Literally back when I started, it was the Wild Wild West. There were literally, I think, only 3 or 4 rules on the books, and they seemed to change almost every show. They would add a new rule. They would run towards a new regulation. And I think that unified rule system has given a level playing field for everybody, both the spectators and the athletes, the commissions, and all the other people that are trying to keep up with the sport as it explodes. That is obviously the biggest change. I think back in those days when I started, I don't think anybody knew who was fighting on the card.
No.
They just wanted to see fights. They didn't know and see vignettes and video clips of who this guy was and why he got into fighting and all the stuff that came much later. It was a very raw, a lot more visceral and different back in those days. And I think it's a better place for us as athletes now.
So you talked about the changes, and one thing that always jumps out to me is how small of community. Even now, it's a small community, but back in the day where, like we talked before you came on here that I saw you at Mohegan Sun. I tell people, like, you don't understand, like, you could have walked up to the headlining fighter and see him walking around Mohegan Sun. I tell people all the time, the Tapology booth was the Tapology crew. The Tap Out crew. The Tap Out crew was selling their own shirts. Like, it wasn't, some college kid. You could walk up to Mask and he'd be selling his shirt and you would talk to him. I remember always tell a story. I'm at Six Flags and there was a guy wearing a Tap Out shirt. And I had to, like, go talk to him because we were, like, in this, like, small fraternity. Like, oh my God, you know MMA, I know MMA. Like, and we start talking, and we actually, like, when they changed the lines, we actually stood next to, we let people cut each other so we could talk to each other while we're waiting in the line for a roller coaster. Like, that's a small community. And obviously, I love the growth of the sport. I wanted the growth, the pay. I've always wanted to be this, huge major, one of the top sports. But then I still kind of miss that little niche thing too.
There was something special about it back then. It was very unique, and some would say underground.
Sure.
It's how it felt. It had more of an underground cultish feel.
Yeah.
And now it's definitely corporate. Uniforms and all the other stuff that have changed.
ESPN and
hell, we had that weigh-in for UFC 13 in the lobby at the Holiday Inn in Augusta. There was nobody there.
Yeah.
And now look at it.
Yeah.
Weigh-ins are a huge event and on the ticker and everything else. The changes are remarkable.
So the other thing when I think about Randy Couture is obviously you formed one of the first mega teams with Team Quest. You brought that over with what you do with Extreme Couture. What is your role with Extreme Couture? Like, obviously I know you're the owner, but what's your everyday, day-to-day role with them? My
role has changed significantly. Obviously when I was in there every single day, grinding out camps, getting new fights, we had a very solid team, a great team. And then when I retired in 2011, the gym kind of went through a little lull, went through a dip. A lot of people fled to other gyms in the area, kind of reset in some ways. Went through some coaching changes. We lost Coach Tompkins. We had Coach Follis, and then, obviously Dennis Davis has been our coach for quite a while now. Eric Nixick coming into the management position at the gym. I don't own the gym anymore. Ryan, I signed it over to Ryan, my son.
Okay.
So he's running it now. I go in there and I will work with individual fighters that ask me to. I think a lot of them are scared to ask me. They don't,
Sure.
But every once in a while I'll get in there and coach or teach wrestling. On Wednesdays we do wrestling with the team. A lot of those guys don't have a wrestling background, so going through an actual wrestling practice is an eye-opener for many of them. So we try to incorporate wrestling into our plan. My role has changed considerably. I was the founder and still fighting and owning and running the place, when we opened it 15 years ago. Now I'm rarely there. I'll come in if somebody asks me to come in and help them out. I'm going in this week to sit down with Eric Nixick and Francis Nagano to talk about his game plan and his training camp for his upcoming fight, because they asked me to come in. I'm happy to do that, but I think a lot of guys are a little intimidated, scared to ask. But traveling, well, not since the COVID and all that crap. I haven't been traveling too much at all. I've just been hanging out at the ranch. But normally I'm traveling between movies, appearances, commentating,
You're busy.
all my charity work. It keeps me hopping. I'm rarely in one place. This is the closest this 9 months that I've ever been to real retirement.
So you mentioned, for instance, Nagano. Obviously, I understand why he wants to work with you. I was there in Boston covering for Sherdog when he fought Stipe. The first time Stipe kept taking him down. Mm-hmm. Obviously, if you can get Randy Couture to help, with the wrestling, obviously that's what most people are expecting Stipe to do. Is there any chance you actually would be in his corner?
I don't think they'd allow me to come to a UFC, to be honest. I think
Really?
Dana White still has a beef with me, so I don't think they'd allow me at a show. Francis has been, since his loss to Stipe and getting taken down, this has been his mission on his own. It had nothing to do with me. He's wanted to improve his wrestling and make that part of his game a lot stronger and make that a threat. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see Francis execute some takedowns and do some things that we haven't seen him do. He's been working on this for a long time, and it's amazing how far he's come. He's an amazing athlete.
Yeah, it's funny because we always talk about that. We say, well, we don't know how much he's improved his wrestling because he keeps knocking everyone out in that first 10 seconds of the fight. It's kind of hard to know.
Tough to argue with that kind of horsepower, for sure.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have, I guess. So do you want to corner people? Because there was a time where you were cornering people every single week, it seemed like, or every single month.
Yeah, I stayed focused on cornering my son. Like I said, a lot of the other guys have never asked me to get involved in their camp, or occasionally they'll just ask my opinion in passing, but I'm never really embedded and been a part of anybody else's camp. Frankly, I've been so damn busy, I'm not sure I would have the time to do it justice, and that's something I would want to be serious about if somebody's asking me. I always felt bad because sometimes I couldn't contribute as much to Ryan's camps as I'd like to, and been there as much for the training as I'd like to have been. So there's a trade. Would I do it? Absolutely. Do I love it? Absolutely. I love coaching. I love, being in the corner and lending that set of eyes and that expertise from my 14 years of fighting to somebody else. I think that's what it's all about. But also focused on the acting career and all the other stuff that I have going on. So that precludes me from doing some of that and takes priority. Frankly, you still got to pay the bills and still got to keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you about the acting thing at the end because I know you always got some big stuff on the horizons. So this show is always talking about the past. So when I think of Randy Couture as a corner man, I always think about in Matt Lilland's corner, in Dan Henderson's corner, in Chael Sonnen's corner, and all the old Team Quest guys.
Yeah.
How much do you keep in touch with those guys?
I see and talk to them frequently. I exchanged messages with Chael the other day. Matt just sent me an email the other day. He's got a national team thing going on for Greco that he's working on. Saw Danny. Gosh, I was supposed to go to hunting hunting waterfowl with Danny a month and a half ago, and had a chance to go fill a deer tag instead of going shooting birds. So, but I see Dan fairly regularly, and we talk fairly regularly. I mean, those are my teammates.
Sure.
Those were the guys that made me who I was, that allowed me the success, grinding on the mats and beating the hell out of each other on a daily basis at Team Quest, and then further down the road at Extreme Couture. So I think once you have that kind of connection and that bond, I don't think it's ever going to go. It's not going to leave.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Sure. Let's talk about the PFL today. PFL tweeted out, made big headlines. They tweeted out the lineup. It's been a long time. They missed the whole season. I know that kind of sucks for MMA fans. It obviously sucks for you as a commentator. First thing I want to ask you about is, I saw an interview you did when the announcement of the canceled season about a year ago. I saw an interview and you talked about that you weren't consulted on it, and you weren't saying that in a negative sense. You're saying, like, I'm not one of the.
I don't call this shit.
If you were consulted, what would you say? What would you say was what did you want to happen?
Yeah, well, it was interesting. I think early on, a lot of us had no idea what real numbers were, what was really going on with this pandemic and COVID. And so on the one hand, you've got Dana White pushing and trying to make Fight Island and fights happen, even though everybody's locked down and under quarantine. And I thought, he's crazy. What is he doing?
Sure.
And then we started to get somewhat more relevant, real information about where we stood and what was really going on, what was going to be required, what protocols were starting to be put in place, and all that sort of thing. When they made the decision to pull the plug on the whole season rather than try and piecemeal some sort of fights together to stay in the market, I agreed with that decision 100%. Sure. We spent so much time and money developing a format, the true sports format that they've used for season 1 and season 2, to kind of half-ass it in any way, shape, or form didn't make sense. And I agree with them 100% on that. We're not just a fight promotion putting one-off fights out. We have a season, we have a post, and we have a championship every single year. And to mess with that after spending so much time building it, I think it was the right thing to do, to pull the plug. The same things being said, I'm happy that Dana White did push. After we started seeing real numbers and what was really going on, I'm glad he did push to get MMA was the first sport back up and running, as far as I could see, doing shows in person and all that. Obviously, following the protocols and the bubble and the whole thing. But I'm glad that he did push that. And I think early on, I thought he was crazy because, like, dude, what are you doing? You know, people's sick. Obviously, now it wasn't that. It wasn't as serious as it was made out to be.
Yeah, the funny thing about the UFC being the first, show to come back, MMA being at one time the only sport. I was saying, I told you guys for 25 years, MMA would be the number one sport in the world. I told you guys. I'm going to wrap this up because I know we're having a lot of technical issues, but I do want to ask you a little bit more about the PFL, and I want to talk about your movies, obviously. So we totally understand where PFL was in such a tough situation compared to any other MMA organization because it's so different. So let's talk about how different. So they announced today some of the combatants in featherweight. They talked about they had the entire field for lightweight starting April 23rd, which you must be excited about that. To kind of have now of what the schedule is going to be. Is there anything about this season in particular that gets you really, really excited to get started?
Well, we've some great new additions to the lineup. Verdum, Rory. I mean, we've got some amazing guys coming. Nathan Schultz back as a 2-time champ. Same with Lance Palmer. I mean, there's a crazy group of kids that have signed up for the new third season of the PFL. So excited to see them in this true sports format, try and make their way through the regular season and get a shot in the postseason. And again, I think we said from the start, what I love about this promotion is it's a meritocracy. If you want to talk trash and play all that, then do that. Knock yourself out. But guess what? It's not going to help you get the nod. It's not going to help you get past anybody. You're going to have to go out in the cage and fight and score points. It's absolutely a meritocracy, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, you mentioned two guys, Nathan Schultz and Lance Palmer. Both guys won 2 championships in a row, so their bank account's looking pretty good. Besides that, you mentioned these big names coming in. These guys must be more excited than anybody because now it's their chance to say, hey, I'm not beating bums. I just won again, and I had to go through former UFC champion Anthony Pettis
Yep.
or whoever. So these guys must be super excited.
Yeah. Pettis, holy crap. How did I forget about that one? Yeah, everybody's excited that he's in the mix now too. And it's going to be really, really fun, really interesting season. I'm very excited for a whole bunch of reasons to be back to work and back working for the PFL.
Yeah, and you guys do a great job. You got a great crew over there. Obviously, you're so busy. We got to know, what movies are you working on right now? I know there's rumors of Expendables 4. Is that definitely a thing?
Expendables 4 has been kind of on the docket for a couple of years now. I actually read a script last spring, and we're supposed to start shooting this fall, is what I was told. But obviously that got changed. I heard a message today from my agent. They're working on a new script, and they're pushing again for next fall. So I'm excited, obviously, to be back with that crew, that group of guys, and be able to do another Expendables installment. It's certainly been the biggest film I've ever been a part of. So be excited to get back in there and do another one.
Any other movies you're working on right now?
Getting ready to start filming on Saturday for a film called Dark Angels, The Demon Pit. And it's kind of a supernatural thriller.
All right.
Take the movie Constantine and they run into Dust Till. Definitely a supernatural thriller.
What's your role in it?
So excited to be involved. I'm playing G-Man. He's one of the guys on the Demon Hunter team that had some military experience, so he's got some tactical expertise.
Any idea when that's gonna be able to see?
I'm guessing probably next summer, sometime maybe the end of next summer. We'll see that movie hit and come out. So starting another one after that called Blowback.
Okay.
I've read the script and know that we're shooting in March, but I don't know who else has been cast yet.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what to look for there, but it's good. Again, starting to get the business back up and running and making some more films.
So let me ask this question. It'll be my last question before I get you out. I appreciate it. We've gone way over time than you've promised to give me. So we've seen you, obviously, you fit the action role. I mean, you're one of the baddest dudes who's ever lived. How about like romantic comedy, Randy Couture? Like, we ever going to see that?
I would love that. I think anything outside the box. I mean, that's why I did Dancing with the Stars, to step outside my comfort zone, step outside the box, develop new fans, and let people know there's more to me than just a guy that gets up in the cage and punches somebody in the face. And so acting is the same thing. I think obviously people can see me in those action roles, and the physicality and authenticity in those situations is, I think, why I got a job in the first place as an actor. Now, for me, it's about challenging myself and being able to put myself in other circumstances and in other roles and challenge myself as an actor. And so I would love to do any of that.
Sure.
Got the chance last fall to do a Western with Michael Jai White.
Okay.
That was kind of a comedy. It was fun. Back on a horse and playing a cowboy, which was, as a kid, my favorite genre of movies.
Okay.
Spaghetti Westerns and Clint Eastwood and Outlaw Josie Wales and Good, the Bad, the Ugly. All of those films were
310
favorite as a kid, for sure.
Yeah. Fantastic. So tell your agent, we'll get in touch with like Jennifer Aniston or Sandra Bullock or one of these ones. And I got the role. It'll be retired MMA fighter looking for love in the arms of Sandra Bullock, or insert whoever your favorite female in Hollywood is.
Wait, is this a documentary or a film?
Ladies and gentlemen, he, of course, is the natural Randy Couture. I was already a fan of him. I'm an even bigger fan now. We had some technical difficulties. He was absolutely fantastic through it. I'm having a snowstorm here. It's probably my fault. I apologize. But he did his thing. So, guys, we'll be right back. We'll be speaking with UFC standout Miranda Maverick. All right, guys, we are on to our second segment. Before I get on to my next guest, I want to say a special thank you to UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture, who's just our guest. We move on to the present. Now, before I introduce this person, I was actually going to put her in the future because this girl's only 23 years old. That said, she's already in the UFC. She's got we'll talk about her accolades in a second. She's got some big wins on her record. So
I'm actually going to put her into present right now because she's fighting next weekend. Let's get right to her. She is in the Invicta Phoenix one-night tournament champion. She's currently 1-0 in the UFC after beating Luana Jojua by first round TKO at UFC 254. She returns this Saturday at UFC 258 when she takes on Jillian Robinson. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Miranda Maverick. Miranda, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
So Miranda, let's get right into it. When I think of Miranda Maverick, obviously I know you first from Invicta. You know, the hardcore fans knew you. You had a lot of buzz coming to the UFC. That's not how many people, you know, entering their UFC debut. It doesn't really have the same kind of name recognition, at least with the hardcores. You know, casuals, that's a little different. But I want to talk about your last loss. Your last loss was against Deanna Bennett. You are a completely different animal when I see you on tape than that girl then. I mean, you're on this killer run. You won the one-night tournament. You beat a girl like Pro Gonzalez right before UFC debut. You beat some really, I mean, Victoria Leonardo, who's in the UFC. I mean, you beat, I think, Shayna Young, who's in the UFC. Like, you went on this run before you even entered. So tell me, what was the biggest change from that girl who lost to Deanna Bennett to the girl who is right now?
I'm maturing, I guess. Pulling a trigger. Learning to actually let my hands go and not be worried about losing a fight. Go in there and try to win a fight again like I used to. I started getting to where, you know, I was trying to fight smart, and it just wasn't the way that my style worked, and my striking wasn't up to par like it needed to be. My mindset wasn't where it needed to be. So I think I finally just changed that, got complete confidence that I had never had before when I went into that tournament. I think it helped that there was so much money on the line, honestly,
Sure.
and everything. It changed my life. So I went in there with a fierce passion and just did my job, basically. I know I have the skills to do it. My dad always jokes that if he had a remote control, I'd never lose a fight ever because he would know how to get with me, you know. I have the body for it. I have the training mindset for it, and I work harder than anybody I know in the MMA world. So I feel like I work hard to earn what I get, but of course the help that surrounds me and the faith that goes along with that.
Sure.
But I ended up getting the chance in the tournament. I said I wanted to fight Deanna in the finals. That happened. So I avenged my loss in the tournament and fought 2 other times that night against Victoria Leonardo, who I had already beat once, and Shayna Young, who I was excited to fight as well. Got done with them, thought I was going to get the title shot, was a little bit spiteful that I didn't right away, but the big name that got a lot of popularity for them with all of her followers and stuff. So I guess she was the girl they wanted to push to be the next title holder. Ended up having to fight her to make my way there. And then, of course, COVID happened. And unfortunately, the title holder was Brazilian and couldn't get the passport to fight in the U.S. But I've been waiting for the UFC call for a while. I've gotten it several times before that for short notices that just didn't make sense for me. I wanted to be smart about entering the UFC, and I didn't want it to be some short notice thing. I wanted them to actually want me. So I waited until they gave me that 4-fight contract, and here I am.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. So there's a lot to break down because you gave me a lot of things to break down. One thing we just talked about, the name of girls. Beating Deanna Bennett, like that must have been just a confident boost because, you know, you feel like you're improving, but, you know, you lost to this girl. Now that when you beat her, now you can show, like, yeah, that girl lost to her. This girl now just beat her, and you won fairly easily. Now, I want to pause for a second because I don't know if I explained it too well when I said the Phoenix tournament. This was a one-night tournament. She beat 3 girls who are 2 of them are currently in the UFC. The other girl is a former UFC fighter. So, I mean, they were talking top level, all in the same night. So you had, you know, this run-up. You talked about not taking some fights when they called. You had some really challenging fighters that you've beaten. Tell me, like, how much did that help you, that you face girls that maybe even be better than some of the girls that are currently in the UFC? Like, how much did that help you in your UFC debut?
It's helped me a lot to just know that I've already fought at that level. It's not this jump in levels like it is for some girls.
Sure.
Like a sudden jump from competition. I worked my way through Invicta. I didn't get there easy. A lot of girls like can just jump to the title or they get a couple fights and they're there. But part of it because I was so young, and part of it just because I didn't have that huge gym behind me or huge following when I started out. And I had to really work my way to the top of Invicta, and I know I'm going to have to do the same thing in the UFC, but I've got a lot of hype behind me, surprisingly for me at least, going into the UFC. So it was very exciting to have like John Anik, DC, and like all the attention on me as I went into that first fight. I enjoy being the underdog, but it wasn't the case this last time,
No.
and I don't think it's the case this time either. And I'm kind of proud that it isn't. I've worked really hard to get here, and it was my dream to be in the UFC, and I plan on making good on that dream.
Yeah, you talk about that. So I just listened back to my breakdown of or our preview that I do with Ben Duffy here on Sherdog, and you at one point were up to a negative 440 favorite, and people don't know that is a extremely massive favorite. Like that's the kind of favorite that a Valentina Shevchenko becomes, or Demetrius Johnson in his prime. You were doing this in your debut, so I'm sure you must have felt a little bit of pressure of that because, you know, not only were you making your debut, but you were also expected to win and win spectacular, which you did. One thing I wanna mention is you talked about your dad. You said your dad, if he could play you like a video game, you wouldn't lose. But your dad actually wasn't at attendance for you. What was that, strictly a COVID thing? Is that what happened?
Unfortunately, it was due to the passport issue. His wasn't renewed. We didn't. It was a little bit too late, and because of COVID, it takes 8 months to get anything done right now. So he put it in as soon as he could. Wasn't soon enough. Was not able to go to Abu Dhabi with me as a result. He will be there in my corner this time, and hopefully every other time from now on. But it still turned out all right. If anything, I think it gave me extra motivation. And, you know, we talk about the pressure thing, and if that gave me pressure with the higher odds, not at all. I feel like I handle pressure well anyway, but
Sure.
in reality, I'm so confident walking into that fight. Everything I had done in that fight camp was utilized to beat Liana in every form and fashion. And I feel like this fight will be no different against Jillian Robertson.
Yeah, so let's talk about your last fight. I'm gonna definitely talk about Jillian, obviously, but against Luana, the thing that jumped out to me right away was it seemed like there was no jitters. You seemed like you were comfortable instantly. Like when I was just taking notes for previewing the Jillian fight, I was comfortable instantly, and you don't see that like with the girls who's making their debuts. So my question really is that is that true? And two, like could the outcome have been any better? I mean, it was a pillar to post performance.
I would tie both of those questions together, actually, for me. I think I looked very shitty in the first 45 seconds of that fight.
Really?
I just got tagged 5 or 6 times. She punched me, and all I would do is kind of touch her. And DC was, the commentators add to that hype when you're rewatching the video. And I'm like, oh, they were like talking shit that first 30 to 45 seconds. And my dad back home was worried for that amount of time. But it just took me that long to keep from getting hit. Like, I was like, what am I doing? Like, I remember thinking in the fight, I'm like, I never get hit in training. What is happening to me right now? And I think it was just, I'm not used to having any nervousness or anxiety walking into a cage.
Sure.
But when Buffer calls your name for the first time, I don't think it's avoidable. So
Sure, yeah. Yeah, because
it was this hit of reality of I'm finally there. And you probably know I almost made my debut back in June.
Yeah.
And I got ripped 2 days before then. So I think just that suspense leading into that first 30 to 45 seconds, it just took me to get my timing, get my comfort zone, and get my range on that girl.
Yeah, and to add to that, not only were your debut in the UFC, that night, but it was on a pay-per-view card, which makes it even more bigger. You have Khabib versus Justin Gaethje, which was people were talking about for months and months and months. So I understand where you get that, but I think you're actually being a very hard critic of yourself, because I didn't see that at all. I saw a girl, I was like, well, she's throwing heat, and she's like attacking with combinations. Like you were throwing 4 or 5 punch combinations, and they were power shots, and I was like, whoa, this girl's failing herself. But obviously, you're in there, so I was reading it wrong. Let me ask this. So has anything changed? Like I know you're, which is amazing that you're a college student on top of this, that you're going for your PhD, you're a teacher's assistant. Like you're the busiest girl in MMA. I shouldn't say girl, I should say young woman in MMA. But has anything else changed? Like, do you get any more recognition from people? Like obviously the hardcore has known you, but like the casual person, do they suddenly like know you when you walk in the gym? Do you get a little more respect?
Gym, of course, every gym, but actually, oddly for me, it has been like just random people. I've never been used to that. Especially I live in Virginia. I'm from Missouri. So like in Missouri, it was pretty common for people to know who I was. I grew up there in the MMA world, was fighting in Kansas City, St. Louis, all those places. But when I got to Virginia, I was this unknown person, and not very many people watch Invicta that are just casuals. You know, they
Sure,
watch
of course.
UFC, Bellator, maybe that's it. And so here, after I won my debut with the UFC, I remember I was walking through Walmart, dressed in my normal clothes, my hair down, mask on, didn't have any identifiers. Like usually when somebody recognized me, I'm like, oh, I'm wearing my shirt.
Sure.
Or, oh, a mask with my name on it. Like it's pretty obvious why they would know who I am. But had a random guy, just an old man, come up and tap me on the shoulder and was like, are you Miranda Maverick? And I was like, who's asking? You know?
Yeah.
And he's like, I did your debut in the UFC a couple weeks ago. And I was like, whoa, how did you know who I was? And he's like, your hair, I recognized your hair. I follow you on Instagram, you know? And I was like, cool. And then I actually had like a landlord recognize me
Really?
that had known me before, like a lot of different people. So that was pretty cool.
It's so funny because I asked that question to a lot of people after the interview. It's always like the most random things. Like I like how you're like, who's asking? Like, are you the IRS? Do I owe you money? Like, no, that's cool that you're getting the recognition. So let's talk about this fight now. Same thing as I just said. You're thrown right back to another big card. You're on a pay-per-view, and now you're getting Jillian Robinson. No, she's not currently ranked in the rankings, but she was recently. So you got to feel great about that matchup. That you're getting You said, I saw your post fight last time. You said you didn't name any names. You didn't want to name any names, but you said you wanted like big fights, and this is a big fight. So how do you feel about the matchup?
I feel really good. So I've kind of like thought about the whole wanting big match. For one, I'd like to get my contract done with, renegotiate, then start fighting the bigger names, just because the money difference there.
Sure.
And people take it out of context and say I'm not happy with the money. That's not what I ever said. I said, I just would like to be paid at least close to what the people are when they lose and I win.
Plus,
but
college is expensive.
It is expensive. Everything's expensive.
Yeah.
Especially now, you can't even get a side job. But in all honesty, I'd be happy with getting in the top 10 next. Like, I think a win over Jillian will give me a top 15 girl if they don't decide to give me another, like, new up-and-comer just to continue my experience level, I guess. But my guess is it'll be another top 15 girl after that and just keep moving up the ranks that way.
Now from an X's and O's sense, Jillian is a girl that I don't want to say one-dimensional because, like, at this point in the UFC, no one's one-dimensional. It's not like the days of Royce Gracie where you had like the specialist, but the game plan. She's going to want to take it down. She's going to want to use her jiu-jitsu. She's going to want to be on top with her jiu-jitsu. So is like when you're training in the gym, is it specifically for that, like, or are you just trying to like hear other people say that they don't train for opponent, they train to get better themselves?
It's actually a little bit of both. I definitely train to get better myself, add tools to my game in between each fight camp, but I'm also very aware and educate myself along with my coaches about my opponents, try to get all the video we can, everything from watching interviews to watching, tapes, which is a whole psychology thing, honestly. With the interviews, you're always like, are they saying this because they know I'm going to watch? Are they saying this because they're just naive? Like, whatever. But with her, I think she is pretty honest in her interviews. I think that she believes that I'm scared to go to the ground and that she's going to try to get me there if possible and beat me up. Because from my eyes, that's her only avenue to success if she even had one. But I think for sure I'm better than her in the striking. I'm a bigger, stronger opponent than she is, for sure. And I don't think she's taken my ground game as seriously as she should be, to be honest. She fought Pearl in that jiu-jitsu match,
Sure.
but I fought Pearl too and demolished her just as much, if not more. I just happened to not submit her mainly because I was trying to put on a clinic. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. If it does go to the ground, I know that she ends up on bottom a lot of times and is able to scramble herself out and get on top, but she's never faced a girl with as heavy top pressure as I have.
Yeah, and you also have a wrestling background. I know you wrestled in college and wrestled a little in high school and stuff. So I want to talk about that. You talk about college. You're currently in college. You're going for your PhD, which is crazy amount of work. I know they say that you're also a teacher's assistant. So I don't even know where this question is. Like, where do you have time to train? Like, you're not an amateur fighter. You're not a, like, I'll take a fight every 6 months on a regional scene. You're in the UFC fighting Jillian Robinson. So, kind of a two-part question. Where do you have time to train and balance all the other things? And then part two is what's the plans? Is the plans to, put the PhD on the back burner for a while and go as far as you can with the UFC, or is it kind of like that's what you're going to college for? You're going to try to do like Stipe, doing both. Like, what's the plan?
So I'll address the first part first. I train about 5 hours a day on average.
Yeah.
Some of my professors don't exactly like it. And a lot of them, I think, feel like it's almost not fair to them because they never had time to do extra stuff. And so I seem to get even more workload thrown on top of me. Obviously, the other grad students are not athletes or anything of that sort. And to be honest, the school's proud of me and they represent me really well. But the grad school themselves is kind of like wishy-washy,
Yeah.
Plus, I'm in industrial psychology, a liberal arts school, and I'm doing this barbaric sport that's, so you get the mixed views within school. But I have enough time to get my schoolwork done. I'm not making A pluses probably like I would be if I'm in MMA. I'm making A minuses, which in grad school is passing. I don't care.
Yeah.
But it is one of those things where, like, if you get a C, you fail. Like, it's grad school, and, like, for me, C's get degrees thing doesn't work, especially to keep my stipend to be able to keep teaching for them. The teaching is what pays for my grad school, so I do that on the side. Now it's online, so that's definitely helped. Every class is online right now, at least. And so that's helped with my time, but I just do school training, and obviously when I have classes I can't do training, so I just fit it around it. I do some 2 hours in the morning, I do 3 to 4 hours in the afternoon, and that's how I do it. And I'd say if anything gets cut out, it's relationships that I should be focused on, or sleep.
Yeah. Well, we're getting close on time. I know it's late where you are. You got to go to bed, but there's a couple other questions I want to ask you. But you said you do some teaching. How many hours a week do you do the teaching on top of the college? Your own studying and your own test taking and all that.
It's supposed to be a 20-hour week right now because it's online. I probably don't spend that much time on it, probably more like 12 per week, just grading papers, going on there, posting announcements, that kind of thing. But it's still difficult, it just kind of depends on the week, especially during their midterms or finals, which unfortunately are during mine too. So like my workload increases probably 4 times during those weeks. Hard with fighting. And to go back to your other question, because I was terrible and forgot to answer the second one, my plan is to continue, get my PhD and just finish it while I'm doing MMA. And then after that, it'll be kind of a whole different decision, depending on what job offers I get, if I get any. I may go the route of doing both at once and just trying to have a 9-to-5 job and then training, which would honestly be easier than what I'm doing now. That's the funny part.
Sure, that's true. That is a good point. Yeah. And you definitely have a more structured schedule too than college classes. You could have a 9 a.m. class, you could have a 8 p.m. class. It's kind of tough that way. I want to ask this question, and we're running out of short time, but this is the big topic right now in MMA. Obviously, you're a female MMA star. Stephen A. Smith comments. I don't know if you've been able to see it. You had to know I'm going to ask you about this. Stephen A. Smith, obviously one of the most popular, maybe the most popular figure at ESPN. He said this week, I want to read his comment. There was a 2-part paragraph. The first paragraph was about not wanting to see male and female actually fight each other, which I think everyone for the most part agree with that. So I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it was the second part that got a lot of hectic. And this is his quote, is when I think about pugilist sports, I don't like seeing women involved in that at all. I just don't like it. I wouldn't promote legislation laws to prohibit them from doing so, but I don't want to see women punching each other in the face. I don't want to see women fighting in the octagon and stuff like that. Obviously, there's not a lot. The MMA community, especially on Twitter, is always divided, especially during political times. But it seems like this is one thing that has actually rallied us together to be like, I don't like to make things personal. I don't know Stephen A. Smith. He could be a great person. But this is in my opinion, this is an outdated time frame. This was the pre-Ronda Rousey era where female fighters were looked upon. As a female athlete, what do you think about these comments?
I've already seen it. I shared it on Instagram, and then I kind of changed my mindset a little bit when I read post by Frank Mir actually. And he was like, why, if we disagree with this so much, are we giving this guy attention? You know, that's all he probably wants from this anyway, is
Good
just
point.
to hype, get attention. And I'm like, that's true, because he already knew how much hate was going to get fed back from that. You're not that stupid, you know, and like, let him fade into the NFL where he belongs, you know? And I kind of believe that too. There's been lots of people, all the way from coaches to other MMA fighters to him, like, why is this getting any more credibility? All kinds of people believe that. And I guess like anything else, I don't care. Like, you can believe whatever you want. I've got my fan base, I've got my support. I don't think it hurts the sport by saying that. You know, if anything, it gave women's MMA more attention because he's such a star in another sport that maybe they start watching it now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I definitely think the people's thoughts of women's MMA has really changed. I mean, there was a time where there wasn't a lot of people interested in women's MMA. Then obviously the rise of first Gina Carano, and then Ronda Rousey, and then now just the amount of fields. And then we think about just the level of athlete nowadays is incredible. You know, pretty much everyone's fight of the year last year was Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Weili Zhang, which was an incredible fight. So credit to all the female fighters. And I think as a male, I speak that I totally disagree with them. I love female MMA. That's why I'm interviewing a female MMA star. Last thing for you, I always ask every fighter, let's hear your prediction for your fight, because you know the bettor is going to want to know how to bet on you.
Yeah, I've had a couple people from my own gym ask me that even. I'm still going with second round TKO.
All right, there you go. So all you guys, go to your casinos, call up your bookie, take Miranda Maverick by second round TKO, and then you'll have tons of money, and you can toss her some money back to help her pay for her college. Miranda, thank you so much. Wish you good luck in this fight and all future fights. Guys, stick around. We got one more guest. We got a future guest. We got Cody Brundage. Be right back. All right, guys, we're in our final segment. This is the future part. Before I get to our guests, I want to thank UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture for being our guest. I also want to thank UFC standout Miranda Maverick. Now we're on to the guy that I believe is going to be a star in the future of MMA. He is 26 years old. He's only been a professional for less than 2 years. He's already been featured on the Dana White Contender Series. He returns in his LFA debut at LFA 99 when he takes on, and I apologize if I say this man's name wrong, Joseph Crawford. Ladies and gentlemen, he is Cody Brundage. Cody, how you doing, my man?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you taking the time. So I watched an interview that you did recently, and you mentioned, which is obviously normal, that you get nervous for fights. Now, obviously, you have a fight coming up this Friday. However, you also have a baby coming up. So my first question to you is, what is more nerve-wracking, getting ready for the fight or about to become a dad?
Definitely a dad. You know, I feel like I've had a few fights. I've been competing in high-level athletics my whole life, so I feel prepared for that, even if I'm nervous. I've never been a dad, so people tell you, like, here's what to expect, and I've read books and all that, but the one thing that seems common that everyone tells you is that you just there's no way to really prepare you with words. You just have to do it. So it's pretty nerve-wracking. I'm excited, but yeah, it's definitely more nerve-wracking, the baby, and especially being so close to the fight just adds to the nerves. So,
of course.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm nervous.
So I have 3 children. I 100% understand all the nerves going. When my wife was in labor with our first one, it was, of course, she had to go in labor in like the early morning hours. It was like 2 a.m, and I just started breaking down because I felt like I wasn't ready, and I was almost like scared to meet my daughter, which is crazy because, you know, she's my whole life now.
I keep telling everyone, I'm like, I just don't want to screw this kid up. You know, I want her. I don't want to ruin anything. So
yeah, I'm sure you'll be a great dad. There's so many things, and people tell you all those, like, oh, this is going to change your life forever. But it changes you in the best way possible. You're going to experience a love that you didn't even know existed. And it's funny, besides having, you know, the love for a child, your love for your wife will change because you'll see a side of her that you never saw before. Like, you'll see this mother quality that is just going to make it even better.
Mm-hmm. I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm super excited. And my family doesn't have many girls, so I'm happy to be adding girls to the family. You know, I had 4 brothers and a sister growing up, so I'm happy to have a little girl.
Oh yeah, it's nothing bad. I have 3. I have 1 boy and 2 girls, and there's nothing better than being a girl dad. It's fantastic. So I think your wife is due like 2. You said 2 weeks later, right?
12 days is
12 days. So
I mean, how scary is it to travel out away from your wife during this time? Because, I mean, that's within the window of she could possibly go into labor.
You know, it was a serious conversation we had to have. You know, with the landscape, the way things are right now, there's just no guarantees on when fights will come.
Of course.
Just COVID. So that was kind of a contributing factor. And then, she's actually, we talked about it when we first said it, like, you know, you're going to have to be here and whatever, but she's actually going to come out the day of my fight and we're just going to drive back that night.
Okay.
Just, you know, so that I'll be there with her. She's like, well, I'd rather go into labor in a place that I don't know and have you there than be by myself. Because, you know, we moved out to Colorado less than a year ago, and it's not like we have a bunch of family out here or anything. Like, we pretty much just have each other. So, just like in the last week, we decided, you know, we'll go out together and we'll just come back because it's like a 6.5 hour drive. It's not too bad.
Sure.
Like, hopefully, you know, our luck isn't that bad that just in that 12-hour window is when we have the baby. But, you know, it'll be a cool story. I'm excited to tell our daughter when she's here, you know, listen, like a week before you were born, Dad had to go fight. Mom came out with him, and then we came back and had you. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, it was when I thought, like, at first, like when she wasn't coming, I was pretty nervous about possibly missing her birth. You know, that's not something that
of course
I'm really willing to do. But just with crazy circumstances that with COVID and everything, it was kind of something I felt like I needed to do.
Yeah, no, I understand. You got to take every opportunity you can, especially an organization like LFA. I mean, that's such a, in my opinion, probably the best regional promotion in America. Obviously, it speaks for itself, the amount of fighters that have gone on to the UFC, gone on to Bellator, gone on to other big organizations. So how could you turn that down? Now, I want to talk about your wife for a second, because your wife is not your typical, you know, female. It's Amanda Bobby Cooper, who, if people don't know, that's a former UFC fighter. She was on the Ultimate Fighter show. I mean, she's well known. So my question to you is, what is the plans? And I know this is obviously getting way ahead of herself, but like, is her plan after having the baby to return to fighting?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're trying. Obviously, it's hard to put like a timeline on it, but she definitely wants to get eating. You know, we moved out to Factory X before we knew we were pregnant, and she was excited to train out here. And before we figured out we were pregnant, she was getting UFC offers again. You know, so
cool.
So I think that motivated her, and I think moving sometimes, like, and finding a new place really opens up the opportunity for growth. You know, I think it's tough when you're in the same place for a long time to grow exponentially. And she was in the same place for a long time, and now she's out here. And I think it just kind of remotivated her, and then having the baby remotivated her. And so I'm excited for her to get back to training and get back to fighting. You know, it's a lot easier when your person's doing the same thing with you, and you're chasing that same dream and same goal. So she's excited. I'm excited. But, yeah, she's definitely coming back to fighting. She's not walking away. She's still young. You know, she's only 29, and I'm excited for her to come back.
Yeah, no, I think the whole world is exciting, but obviously being a mother would be the number one role in her life. Let's go back. I hate to bring it up, but your last fight was, you know, your biggest fight of your career at the Contender Series. You faced William Knight. You can probably tell by my accent, I'm from New England. I've met William so many times. He's at every local show. He's the nicest guy you'll ever meet. He's just like a great guy. So I want to ask this question because I don't know if anybody's asked you this. When I rewatched that fight and I tweeted out that night, like I said, I've interviewed William. I'm a fan of William. I'm a fan of his team. I'm a fan of his manager. I didn't like the elbows. I thought the elbows were very close to illegal, if not illegal. I know you don't want to make excuses for the loss, but did you get a chance to watch it back? And do you agree with me on being very questionable?
I've watched it a lot of times. I don't know. I think William did what he had to do to win. I put William in a really bad spot early.
Yeah.
And I was this close to having the contract. And he's a tough son of a bitch, and he come back and made it happen for himself. So, I mean, I've had a lot of people, like, I know after the fight there are a lot of people that said the elbows or that Herb Dean was moving me off of back mount. But a lot of that stuff was just me and my experience and putting myself in those positions to even let that happen, you know. And I grew a lot from that and learned a lot from that. And, you know, I think the statement that you learn the most from your losses is it's corny and it's cliche, but it's true, you know, and I learned a lot from it. And, I mean, I'm never going to be a guy to even give myself any kind of excuse.
Sure.
You know, I lost that fight because I put myself in a bad position. And I was dominating that fight. and I, like I said, put myself in that bad spot and cost myself the contract. But I bet you I won't put myself in that spot again, you know. So it's tough, and I watched it a lot of times. I've gone back and watched it a ton, you know, because it's a gut wrencher, man. It still bothers me that I was that close, but it motivates me too. So I'm excited to get back to that level and, you know, go against more guys like William. I think I showed in that fight that I belong at that level,
Sure.
and now it's just back and proving it and getting back to that level more consistently.
Yeah, and I mean, he's already gone on to have some success in the UFC, so that obviously probably boosts your confidence that there was a moment you had the back. Daniel Cormier was calling the fight. He actually said it's over, thinking like you were about to finish him. So let me ask you.
Over.
Yeah, he might have jumped the gun a little bit. And he has. I don't think he's watched enough of William fight because that's his thing to like take a beating and then come back. And I know I was putting you in a tough spot, asking you about the elbows, but you said I saw in another interview. You said you talked about like just having the experience. That's a good thing. The experience of you know, kind of understanding how the UFC does things. That's always thing. But if you said you wouldn't do that again, so what would you do different if you fought him again?
I think I would just. It's so hard to say because in that moment, I was such a different fighter. You know, I had just moved to Factory X. I'd been there for 6 weeks. So I hadn't even had a full camp out there. I've been there for 6 months now. So just my style and how much I've evolved is so different. But in that moment, I think I would have just tried to be a little more composed. You know, I was so close to getting the finish. And then we got in a scramble. He came up to his feet. I think if I could go back and change anything, I would just back off for a minute and just refocus, recenter what I'm doing. Instead of diving in on that takedown, leaving my head low. Obviously, you know, that didn't work out for me. But I think just being a little more composed and realizing, you know, it's tough when you come from wrestling where we got 7 minutes. And, you know, if you're a high-level wrestler, you know that your job isn't a lot of times to just win. You know, you want to major a guy or you want to pin a guy. You got to get bonus points for your team. Like, the goal is never just to win. And I think sometimes in MMA, that's not the best mentality because you just need to win, really. Win first, and then everything else comes second. And you have 15 minutes to do it. You know, so it's just a different pace and a different deal. And I think I would just slow it down a little bit more. I've always been a really fast starter in all my fights. I mean, if you go look at my fights, I have a couple 12-second knockouts. I have very quick finishes, and that's because I come out so aggressive. But I think just pacing it out a little bit more and feeling it out would have been beneficial to me in that fight. You know, like I said, I'm a way different fighter now. So the way I fight him now would probably be I couldn't even have done it back then. You know what I mean? Like 6 months ago, I couldn't have even fought William Knight the way I would fight him now because I didn't have the ability to do it. But now I do. I'm a different guy. You know, I was up at 205, so I don't think I'm going to be staying there either. I'll be at 85. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of things that I think, you know, looking back, I would have changed. But it's tough too because, you know, you come out and maybe if I hit him 3-4 more times, fight's over, right? So I don't know. You drive yourself crazy doing that, but yeah, it's tough.
I know.
It's still tough.
Well,
Beats me up.
We'll move on to better things. You just mentioned that you're back down to 185. I know you bounced around a little bit. Was the decision to move to 185 strictly based off your last fight, or was that like always the plan to go back down?
Yeah, so I took the fight with William at 205 because I mean he's a big guy. Like I think that's what everyone first. Yeah, but he's a shorter guy. So I was like, okay, you know, I think height's a bigger deal for me and reach. You know, I wrestled heavyweight and 197 in college, so I'm used to those bigger bodies, and I don't ever really feel too out strength or muscled. You know, I think physically I can compete with those guys. I walk at 200 pounds. You know, I'm an 85er through and through. The plan was, you know, get the contract and then sign the contract at 185. So,
okay.
You know, staying there is just kind of where I naturally belong. Not that I fought all over, you know, my whole career, not just that fight. I fought at 205 and I fought at 195 catch weights. I've done all kinds of stuff, but 85 is where, if I'm at the highest level, that's where I need to be. So, it wasn't based off that last fight, but it is nice to be going back down.
Yeah, I understand that. And also it's good to have the options to either fight in 2 weight classes because, you know, a lot of times the call comes, it's on short notice, it's out of a weight class. I mean, there's guys fighting this weekend, you know, that's on different weight classes. So that's obviously good to have. You also mentioned earlier, it's the first time having a full camp with Factory X. Obviously, Factory X is one of the best teams in the entire world. Just talk about that experience. Like, what has been the best change by having a full camp with, you know, just a room full of killers?
Yeah, I think just my mindset. You know, I think when you're the top dog at your gym, which I was at my old gym, and you got all these people hyping you up, the pressure there is different than when everyone around you is at that level. I think when everyone around you is at that level, you can get back to having fun more, which I got away from, which was tough. Because this sport, listen, man, this sport is so hard that there's so many easier things to do if you're not having fun to make more money. You know, it's not like you're making a killing right now, especially on the regional scene. So I think I was just able to get back to having fun and learning. And the other thing is this camp, like I've only known about this fight for a month, but I was training for, like I said, 5 months before that without an opponent. But I'd never done that my whole pro career. My whole pro career, I'd been game planning for whoever. I'd been training with an opponent in mind. And sometimes that can stagnate your growth a little bit because you're just focused on how do I beat this person in front of me instead of how do I get better as a fighter. So for 5 months, I've been able to just focus on sharpening my tools, getting my skills better, growing, and having fun, like I said. And so, yeah, I mean, the gym there is just crazy. You know, I got Anthony Smith, Zach Cummins, Dustin Jacoby, Josh Frem. Like, these guys are absolute animals. And you spar on Fridays, and it's close to a fight. You know, it's a fight simulation every Friday. And I tell everyone, like, they ask what's the best part about fight week. The best part about fight week is that I don't have to spar my teammates because those guys, for real, those guys are hammers. I'm like, thank God I don't have sparring. Like, I'd much rather be in a cage with somebody. Yeah, so it's good, man. Factory X has been awesome for me. You know, Coach Marks really took me under his wing, and Anthony Smith really took me under his wing, and I've grown a lot, just as a person and as a fighter as well. And like I said, I got back to having fun, and that was the biggest thing I think I was missing for a while. And when you're having fun, it makes everything easy. When you're not and you're forcing yourself to show up, it's tough. So I'm excited to fight. Usually I'm pretty anxious. Like we talk about nerves. You know, normally I'm anxious. I'm still nervous, but it's an excited nervous. I'm excited to get in there. And, you know, I'm not anxious anymore. I'm excited to compete. So that's fun and that's good for me, you know.
Yeah. Definitely take your mind off the all the stresses of the new changes that'll be coming soon too. Let's talk about your opponent real quick. I don't know that much about him. I know he trains under Gilbert Melendez. His name is Joseph Cropshot. I apologize if I say his name wrong. What do you know about him, and how do you think you guys match up?
Yeah, so he trains out of a good gym. He's a tall, long guy. He's got pretty good striking, you know, very technical. And he's got really good jiu-jitsu. You know, he's a brown belt out of El Nino and Team Santos, which I've had one of my old coaches when I trained back in Michigan has trained with him before. So he's solid. You know, I know he's good, and he's kind of in the same point I am where he's coming off a loss, and a win here does a lot for him. But I just think it, like on the regional scene, you know, if you're not a Contender Series guy, if you're not picked up by the UFC, like if you're not on that radar, I just feel like I'm above that level. You know, maybe I'm not. You know, but that's just how I feel. I feel like I'm on the level to be in the UFC. You know, I think that fight with Williams showed that. You know, I'm competing with guys every day in the gym that are in the UFC. And I have success. So I really feel like I'm on that level, and it's just a matter of time until I get there. And Joe's good. Like, don't get me wrong. Joseph's a good fighter. I've watched his film. He's solid. I just think there's different levels. And especially, you know, I always feel confident going against a guy whose strength is grappling or the ground because I'm in the 1% in that field. So I'm like, if I want it to go there, it'll go there. And if I don't want it to go there, it won't. So that always makes me feel good. And yeah, the matchup's golden for me, man. I can really show my growth on the feet, and then if I need to take it to the ground, I will. You know, I haven't fought one guy yet that stopped me from doing that. So if I need to take it there, I will. And yeah, it's good. I'm excited. I always do better with better opponents. Mm-hmm. You know, you can get up for them, you can train hard for them. You know they're coming to take your spot. So yeah, I'm motivated and ready to rock. Yeah,
you mentioned that you've been training with UFC caliber people who are in the UFC. You're kind of underselling it. You're training with guys who headline UFCs. I mean, Anthony Smith has headlined 5-6 pay-per-views. He fought for the title. I mean, so that obviously is a confidence boost. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. I got to get one last question I always ask all the people who's about to fight. Tell us, you know, a lot of people watch the show. They want to make a bet. So how do you win?
Honestly, man, I've been telling everybody this is going to sound so cocky, and I'm not a cocky guy. You know, I'm just very confident. I really feel like I'm going to finish him on the feet in the first round. I just don't think there's many 85ers that carry power like I do, and then can also threaten the wrestling. And when you put those two things together, it leaves a lot of holes. And it only takes one. You know, I got one shot knockout power, so if I land that, he'll be going to sleep. I think first round, I don't think it gets out of there.
there you guys have it. If you want to make some money, pick Cody to win by first round stoppage, either get a knockout. You'll be very, very wealthy. And you know what? If you win, throw some money back to Cody so he can start his kids' college fund. Cody, good luck in this fight. And obviously, more importantly, good luck with the baby. Congratulations, both you and Amanda Maverick Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show. I want to thank all our guests. First off, UFC Hall of Famer Randy Couture, UFC standout Miranda Maverick, and of course, the guest we just talked to, LFA 99 star Cody Brundage. Guys, I'll be back shortly next week. I haven't completely finalized the lineup, but it is a star-packed one for what I have. I can't announce it yet, but make sure you stick around and you just listen to MMA Past, Present, and Future.